What's going on there, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's a conversation you could be having during the day, but having at night. We're back with another week. New show for you guys tonight. We'll be continuing our movie review. This month's theme is silent movies. And the movie that we'll be reviewing is The Artist, which is pretty interesting because it's a recent movie. It came out in 2011, but it harkens back to the early age of cinema, as well as Lost Speedways, the review for Lost Speedways, episode 2.
What a great episode that was.
It's it was very interesting, and kind of like how this particular track had a history that kind of brought the idea of like NASCAR or that particular sport like kind of full circle. I don't want to give it away too much, but there's there's an element to that specific track that kind of brings.
It's not just racing that makes that racetrack famous.
Right, exactly. So stay tuned and for that review, as well as a bit of a maybe not so much as a departure from what we usually do, but discussion about an interview that I came across a little while ago of a Confederate soldier by the name of Julius Howell. He was an actual veteran of the Civil War, and he fought for the South, and he did an interview, and by God's good fortune, it was at a time when they were able to record it and preserve it.
See, so it's funny because this kind of discussion thought arena that Andy and I were in came about by watching Birth of a Nation, and kind of the whole idea of we would love to have been we were talking about the movie and been around to we would love to see if there was ever any interviews done about the movie and the people behind them, but it also kind of stemmed from the discussion of it would be interesting to with Civil War veterans, because there was a time when as technology came about where they were able to there were people alive from that era when they could record their speech, and it would be interesting to hear their story, and especially the Confederate side, because they, especially nowadays, that everything the South, the Confederacy is vilified, and it would be really good to hear about their viewpoint, what they fought for, why they fought, and along with Birth of a Nation being actually very, very pro Lincoln, which is which we found very fascinating.
Right. Yeah. Right. I believe. Yeah. We both wondered what would it be like here an account, and I think this was after we had finished the stream. And then I just sparked my memory because just like a little while ago, I was kind of doing the whole YouTube rabbit hole thing, and this interview with Julius Howell happened to
came
pop
up.
And so I was like, oh wow, and I listened to it, and it was very eye opening.
Very eye opening.
Yeah, just to not to oversell it or give anything away, because we will be talking about it in a little bit. I've actually linked it in the description down below.
Awesome!
I did. I got on here a little. I set up a little earlier, and so I grabbed the link to that interview, and I linked it in the description. So if you guys, I highly recommend you guys listen to this man, and and it might just open up, it just might open up your eyes a little bit. it might make you start wondering and questioning some things that you thought you knew, but maybe you didn't get the whole story.
Yeah, I think yeah. So I think this will be fun to talk about.
Absolutely. But before we get into that, we get let's kind of catch up with each other since we haven't really spoken since
Last
the
week.
last stream. Yeah, and I mean, and of course we have to bitch about the weather.
Yeah.
Because for those of you who don't know, right now, Southern California is experiencing a bit of a heat wave.
Yeah.
And actually, we've been experiencing a heat wave for the last couple of weeks now. The week prior, though, it was a little bit more humid, and so being outside, it was just damn near insufferable. Like it was just
Draining,
so muggy,
yeah.
and just like suffocating. But this week was like kind of returned to course for particularly the for the Los Angeles area, and in that it was very dry, and even just this past weekend it got up into the very pretty high triple digits.
120 something.
Yeah, like 120 something. I mean, to the point where like if you went out into the sun, it felt like your skin was on fire.
Yeah. Well, and me and my wife, we had the brilliant idea of, well, let's beat the heat. Let's go because it's Labor Day weekend, so we decided let's go down to San Diego. It's got to be cooler down there. And
right. Well, I mean, yeah, that's like it's on the freaking what is it? The tourist posters, like come to San Diego for the weather. It doesn't get hotter than 83 degrees.
Yeah, it was about 115. So I brought my sweater
Yikes.
just in case.
Yeah, I know. A muff. A muff.
Yeah.
If you're so inclined.
A little bit nippy. 115. Yeah. But yeah, no, we actually. Well, she needed kind of like she wanted to get out of the house and do kind of just do something. Which was fine for me, and the thing I was looking forward to is to hit all my old favorite eating spots, which I some of the Mexican places that I enjoy. We got to eat there. I grabbed a bunch of stuff back with me. I went to Phil's Barbecue, picked up a bunch of ribs. And I was able to enjoy that with my parents and everything. So overall,
so it was a Pap Super Family trip.
Yeah, Well, they didn't go with us. I brought the ribs back with me so they could enjoy because they enjoy ribs. But it was just me and the wife, and that was pretty much that was most of the weekend. Yesterday was more of recovery time, and then she was still like kind of feeling a little drained from the weekend. So I ended up staying home today to kind of take care of her. And so today for me was kind of like good because I kind of needed some rest too. Mm-hmm. So I spent most of the day kind of just finishing up some thoughts for today's podcast, and then I played a lot of Ghost of Tsushima, so I was very happy about that.
Of course.
I'm getting close to the end, so I'm been what a good game.
I guess I'll have to take your word for it.
Yeah, it's bittersweet because like it's so good. I'm excited to finish it and see how it ends, and at the same time I'm sad because the game is going to be coming to an end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is it? It's like those people that never the people that read books and they never finish them because like the story is so good they don't want it to end. So
exactly.
They purposely don't read the end, and just so that they can hold on and like preserve kind of like the mysteries. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. But no, it was overall pretty damn good weekend. Looking forward to the rest of the week. Getting my new fridge in on Saturday, so I know wife's happy about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty damn good week.
What was that?
A pretty damn good week.
No. Sounds like a really good weekend for you and the missus.
Yep.
Yeah, my weekend was more or less typical. It was my sister's birthday this past Friday, so oh jeez. Um, my family just spent the Saturday together hanging out. Had dinner together. We had sushi, which was nice. Yeah, and my dad, he makes sushi. He took a class, so and my sister really likes sushi. Oh, jeez. So for her birthday, she asked my dad to make sushi, and my dad, he splurged a little bit and he got toro. Yeah, I was surprised too because I just because he was asking everybody what they'd like to have, and my sister said just as long as there's salmon, I'm good. And I said tuna would be nice as well, and that's all I said. I didn't specifically request the toro, but my dad kind of surprised me or surprised the whole family with getting the toro. And if you get yeah. And for those of you who don't know, toro is like the belly part of the tuna, and it's very fatty and delicious.
Yeah, I had that last time I had sushi. That I had that too. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but damn, it's so good.
Absolutely. It's kind of how it'll kind of be how salmon tastes like all the time. Like not even because salmon's a very fatty fish.
Yeah.
And so toro is kind of like that. Although salmon belly, that's just like all sorts of nuts.
Yeah. What is your favorite like type of sushi? Like, what do you enjoy?
Um, well, my three go-tos are salmon, tuna, and what is it? Oh, jeez, yellowtail, freaking hiccups.
Yeah. Yeah, yellowtail is my favorite. That's
Yeah,
honestly anything.
it's a very subtle fish.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just like kind of keep eating it, and then you kind of develop a taste for it. But
Yeah,
then of course
I like
you oh god, have your specialty fish like or parts of the fish like toro or salmon belly, um, but also albacore is good.
yeah.
Albacore is really good, as well as well for me specifically, what is it? Mackerel. Oh jeez, mackerel.
And
And not a lot.
he's dying of hiccups.
Yeah, I'm dying of hiccups over here. That's how you know it's real, all right. That's how you know that this stream isn't just pre-recorded and just
Yeah.
played out.
Because
I'm
all that
actually
would have
having
been edited
hiccups.
out.
Yeah, I didn't edit this out. I'm actually having hiccups right now. Oh, there it is. What else?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
for
mean
me, like,
mackerel is like because mackerel isn't necessarily served raw. It's kind of cooked,
yeah.
and so not everyone's a fan of it. Uh,
I'm
but
not. I don't necessarily like it too much with sushi, but I do like
right,
mackerel.
like the onigiri type.
Yeah, yeah. My go tos. I really love yellowtail. I love um, ebi. I like the shrimp, and then eel.
Oh yeah, yeah. Again, but like kind of in the same vein as mackerel. I don't like to have it. I don't like to have too much of it. I like to have it as a part of the course, but like I don't necessarily want to keep going back to mackerel or keep going back to eel.
It makes sense. Yeah, I don't get a ton of eel. Like I just get like maybe like a few pieces, and it's like, okay, good, I'm satisfied. Like,
right, it's like scratching an itch. It's like you're itch. You kind of
exactly.
have that. Kind of have that taste for eel or mackerel, but you don't want to have it all the time. But yeah.
I always remember like we'd go like when I used to go to a Sundubu place called BCD. They would always serve like fried mackerel before.
Oh yeah, like the
before the meal, yeah.
the fried fish.
Yeah,
It's funny because I'm not a really big fan of cooked fish. Or maybe
Really?
or maybe I'm just not a fan of the crocker fish that they serve.
Oh, it could be, yeah.
But yeah, it was so strange because when I was a little kid, I used to eat it no problem. And then I would kind of shy away from like sushi or sashimi. But as I got older, it completely inverted.
Yeah, taste buds change. Things change. Yeah, I know. Like my taste in foods have changed quite a bit. In the last number of years as I've grown up.
No, sorry, folks. I'm still like trying to get rid of my hiccups.
Yeah. You're gonna be all right, Andy.
Yeah, I'll be fine. It's interesting, like the cause of hiccups is I forget something. I forget the specific, but it's like something to do with your diaphragm.
Yeah, it's a diaphragm spasm.
There it is. That's what it is. Yeah, diaphragm spasm.
I know. I get it. I get it. Like when I eat too fast, like especially bread. If I eat bread too fast, I get hiccups every single time.
Yeah, for me, it's usually when my breathing pattern gets disrupted. Like if I clear my voice too hard, or or yeah, it's just something that interrupts my normal breathing pattern. Usually triggers it. Which kind of makes sense why now people get hiccups when they get drunk.
Yeah.
Because especially when they get like really heavily drunk, like they're breathing harder, so their breathing patterns get disrupted, and so they the diaphragm will have like that spasm, and so yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's maybe that's how it is. Like when I eat bread, I'm just like shoveling it in too fast, and it fucks up like my breathing. I just need...
Maybe it just might be.
So apparently, like according to my wife, like I don't chew my food enough because I'm always.
What do you eat like a duck? Just like
I guess so. Like not quite that bad, but apparently, like I don't chew enough, and so she was like making fun. It's like you have to chew. You have to chew. You don't have to swallow it so fast. It's like it's a point. Like I'm wasting time here. I just want to eat.
Yeah, as a kid, I remember I used to just like swallow my food really fast, and my mom would always tell me to slow down. But as an adult, I found a balance, and I actually enjoy eating not only just like the sensation of eating, but also like savoring the flavors and the smells and just like the ambiance of it all.
Yeah, it's yeah, maybe. Oh, I don't know. Maybe because I got so used to eating fast, and so I just like.
Oh, is that also a product of being in the Navy and stuff?
I think being in the Navy, and then especially now, like I have to eat like my lunch really quickly. I don't get a whole lot of time.
I guess now specifically because you're so often shorthanded at work.
Yeah. God, in the Navy, I was lucky to get like 10 minutes for lunch. But man, yeah. So you had an awesome weekend eating some toro and.
Yeah. Well, then on Sunday I went. What was it?
I was saying, I'm shocked your dad splurged on that. That's
Yeah,
that's
me too.
unusual.
Because I did not say specifically. I specifically didn't ask for the Toro. I just said, "Hey, tuna. I would like to have some tuna." And then
Yeah.
he just kind of surprise, and then he goes and surprises us and gets his Toro. It's just like, whoa.
Damn. Yeah. Fancy.
Like, yeah. So I can legitimately say I have the best dad in the world, and I'll fight anyone. I'll fight anyone for
Pretty damn awesome.
it. Anyways, with all that, just quickly. Oh, and then Sunday I went out and I had Korean barbecue with. I don't know why I was there, but Dancing Jason asked me because me and Dancing Jason go to the same church, and he's a teacher in the church, and I guess it was one of the kids' birthdays. What is it? I guess they couldn't necessarily invite all of the youth group kids, and it's not as though we have a huge youth group, but yeah, but apparently, like, I was just there, and so my Dancing Jason just invited me, so I went, and it was good. It was for this kid named Manny. He recently joined the youth group, and it actually turned out to be his birthday the following day, so it's kind of it was a birthday celebration for him as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
Man, you had a whole smorgasbord of awesome things to eat today.
Yeah, but it sucked because because no one can eat indoors, so you have to sit outside underneath tarps, and it was like being in an oven.
You're in an oven cooking meat that like
Exactly, precisely that. Precisely.
Well, you also are like roasting.
Yes,
awesome.
Exactly. So yeah, very very full weekend, full of birthdays. Filled with delicious food. That was my weekend. All right, let's get into the topic for discussion, and which is, like as we teased earlier, is the interview with Confederate soldier / veteran Julius Howell.
Yeah. So this I was really fascinated by this interview because I had never heard about this guy. Well, I've never heard about this soldier or heard about this interview, and it's this is something that you would never hear. This should be something that like is heard of, that's listened to in schools talking about the Civil War. That's never going to happen, obviously, but it should be. And the as I've said for ages now, talking about the Civil War, it's not this very binary, like, oh, the Union good, Confederate bad, Union is fighting for freedom, Confederates are fighting to maintain slavery. That's not the narrative. That's not the story of the Civil War. It's so much more. Honestly, like that whole thing, the idea of fighting for the freedom of slaves, that was like literally one of the last things that Lincoln threw at the end of the war to kind of like that was something that kind of rallied the Union troops, because for the Union was getting their ass handed to them for a majority of the war, up until towards the end. He got rid of his generals, brought in Grant, and then he kind of threw in the Emancipation Proclamation. And because before, like, what are the troops fighting for? Like, preserve the Union, and that's
right.
And the federal, the entirety of the United States wasn't really as important as the individual states. So even the guys that were in the Union, they're like, well, that's yeah, we kind of believe what the southern states are wanting.
Right. But really quickly, the whole reason, again, it's for a modern equivalent. it's kind of like the whole like war on terror thing, where initially it was because the September 11th attacks and we're gonna get Osama bin Laden, but then it quickly shifted to like ousting like Saddam.
Yeah, that happened like
You know,
very quickly, and there was a lot of stuff that's like, what the hell are we doing over in this region? Like, and it was deemed the war on terror, but it was a lot of places where we didn't really need to be.
right? And so
And
yeah, so I and kind of
it quickly escalated into like a war that we won.
escalate to
Because
what?
that became kind of a war that couldn't be won because the objective was so foggy that no one knew what the hell
Right. It was
we were fighting
very
for.
It was very vague in general. It was like, oh, the war on terror. It's like, well, usually how we fight wars is we declare on a specific nation, but
Exactly.
the impetus to start the war on terror wasn't actually by uh, sanctioned or recognized government. It was committed supposedly by a citizen of a particular allied country, and so we couldn't necessarily go to war because one citizen goes bombs 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 us. And so yeah,
Right.
that's when the whole like umbrella term of war on terror began, which kind of gave them carte blanche to just first you go into Afghanistan to find Osama bin Laden, but it's like, oh well, now there's like some intelligence that says that Iraq was secretly funding these guys, so it's like, oh, so we have to go in to Iraq. It's like, oh, and I think there's weapons of mass destruction there too, so it's like, oh no, for sure, now we have to go. um
Yeah.
but yeah, just to bring kind of an equivalency to to the Civil War, where it's like the reasons were to keep the nation one, and then it slowly kind of and then again, like as Robert was saying, at the end it shifted towards like this idea, it's like, oh, we're gonna free the slaves.
Yeah, and well, because the initial beginning was because as the nation was progressing, moving more westward, and new territories and states were being added to the union, um, there was everyone thinks it's like, oh well, the South wanted to preserve slavery, so they wanted to have slavery in their states, and that's really not the case. It was more it was who would be in charge of these states? Would they be autonomous? Because essentially, the founding idea is that you have these 13 states. It's essentially city states. There are 13 they're essentially 13 small countries that have unified into like one entity. And the federal government was its reach was so minimal where there was more power towards like each individual state because especially at that time, if you lived in, let's say, like Florida, figuring out what's going on in Washington or in the capital, like you can't nation that quickly. So it's more important that there's local power that obviously fits under kind of the umbrella of the United States, but it's really kind of an autonomous country, in this unification. And it was as they were moving, as the country is moving more and more westward, the idea of who's going to be running these states, and the federal government wanted more power, and it had been getting more and more towards that, where the federal government wanted to wield more power, and that's where that tension had been building for quite some time. Back when as early as like the early like 1830s 40s, And even in the 1850s there was almost a civil war, but they were able to kind of tamp that down. And once Lincoln um, was sworn into office, that's when all hell broke loose, and that's where we get the Civil War. And yeah, that's kind of like the basis for the war. What how the war started. It was just an overreach of government, and that was a lot of those southern states felt like you're breaking the Constitution, and they felt there was a clause in there. It's like, well, we can leave the Union whenever we want. Like that it's an agreement. If you're not going to follow the Constitution, we're not going to be a part of this country anymore. Because that's kind of like how it was at the founding, to get some of the southern states, even though um, they wanted to get the southern states involved, like they had to kind of like make this provision in there. And that's kind of like what that's kind of like what they were fighting for. It was just government overreach, a lot of it.
Right. And I think because I don't know if it's still taught in public schools or not, but a lot of it like is it was like new states were being formed and entering the union, and it's like um, the federal government wanted to like wanted more power in controlling what type of the idea of like a free state versus a slave state, um, and so again, because there was no 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment yet. That was really up to the individual states to decide for themselves. And
Right.
so it was really more about culture and like being controlling the culture of a state. Because that I think about it more and more, you know, there the United like there's really no like distinct cultures uh, in America. Because before you had like your New Englanders, you had your Southerners, you had your Midwestern types, um, and then you had like your the coastal people, Washington, Oregon, California.
Yeah.
But now it's like wherever you go, there isn't really much. I dare say diversity. Because now everyone, before there was a Southern accent, there was a Northeast accent, there was a California accent, apparently, but now everyone more or less talks the same
For the most part, yeah.
for the most part. I mean, like how they sound is what I mean. And so, yeah, again, I'm not making a case for we should have kept slavery, but
Yeah. Yeah. For like the a billionth time,
I know
no, we should not
I'm
promote
kind of sick to death
slavery.
that we always have to qualify it, but
Because some asshole's gonna clip it out of context and like.
no, exactly. No, of course they will. They're gonna clip it out of context. Like, oh, you guys are for slavery. It's like that's not what we said. But it's
But there was already, and the thing is, like, because uh, they keep pushing back the idea. Oh, like, slavery started back in like, for this country in like 1619. It's like, no, it actually like it didn't. And they, it's like
well,
the
well, here's
1619
the thing.
project.
Yeah, but here's the 1619 project is about when the first African slaves got to America. Not necessarily, so that's when they saying that's when American history started.
Is like in like the uh it's just like a bunch of revisionist history, and like the amount of like actual slaves that you know even at its peak was, I mean, it's bad, no, don't get it in any capacity, but at its peak was actually not even like that many. and this isn't even like counting the numbers of like the Irish children that were kidnapped in the Atlantic slave trade, and they were quote unquote indentured servants, but they were essentially slaves that they beat the shit out of, and they were worth less than the African slaves.
Right, because they think that just because the Irish slaves, got like two beatings fewer than the black slaves, they were somehow better, or they're treated better or something. Just like no, it's like these people like you could it's just like say indentured servitude is like uh it's like putting lipstick on a pig. That's all it was doing. It was churching up the language. It's like, but they were really slaves. They were actual slaves. You think those indentured servants were allowed to go out on the town whenever they liked, or you know live off off site, or live like away from like the house or like the plantation or whatever. It's like no, they had to live there. They weren't allowed. They didn't have freedom of movement. Everything they did, everything they ate was controlled. So you can call it indentured servitude all you want, but it's slavery.
And it explains so much of like especially after the end of the Civil War and the new amendments that came out, like why there was so much hatred for the Irish too, like because it didn't just come out of like nowhere, like all the Irish need not apply, and some people say it's because of their like Catholicism. That may have been part of it too, but a lot of it had to do because they're essentially they were former slaves essentially that a lot of people didn't want to have be a part of society.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, yeah. So again, kind of going back to the Julius Howell interview, and then he states it plainly, you know, as it can ever be stated plainly, and it's like like the reason why we fought was for states' rights. You know, we weren't fighting for right, and
Right. It was he was very that was like he made sure to emphasize that.
right in the interview, like he made sure like there was no doubt in anyone's mind who was listening to this interview that the reason why the southern states went to war, declared war, was because of states' rights, because the federal government was imposing on them, and they were and they were actually going against the Constitution by trying to force southern states um, to try and change their culture essentially, and even like he even talks about you know the great the big boogeyman of the South, the which is interesting, not Jefferson David, who was the president of the Confederacy, but General Lee. You know, he even bring he what is it? Julius Howell. He says that General Lee, he was in the process of freeing his slaves, and even like General Lee's I believe he said his father-in-law was in the works of like in the process of putting it in his will that after he died that his slaves would be set free.
Lee was kind of in it because the slaves that he had inherited. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like that he bought new slaves or anything like that. It was they were inherited. He didn't actually believe in slavery. He thought it was wrong. Um, yeah, and the only reason that he fought for the Confederacy is because in his own words, he says that fighting against his fellow countrymen, which means fellow Virginians, he could not do it. Um, he felt very, and actually, to be honest, he didn't even want to fight for the Confederacy either. He didn't want to fight because he didn't want to. This war was essentially kind of like at this point. that we're in now in this country, where it's like it's pitting, family against family, like, and he
Right,
didn't want to
brother.
be any
Yeah,
part of that.
right.
He
It's like,
felt a
yeah,
moral
this.
conviction that this war was wrong,
Right,
and
yeah, because it was like, I forget where it was, but like, yeah, the Civil War was like literally a fight between brother against brother, fathers against sons.
yeah,
It split up families because they had such powerfully differing views on the matter. Some people wanted to stay within the Union, some people thought, sided with the Confederacy, and again, it wasn't because of slavery; it was because of states' rights.
well, and hell, even Virginia itself was torn because that's how we get West Virginia. And, it's
That's right.
the yeah, because there was parts of even I think even Missouri was kind of like split in half too. It wasn't just like, oh, we're part of the Union or we're part of the Confederacy. Even like that whole there was a bunch of states that were torn, and some were restored, but yeah, West Virginia was essentially a product of the Civil War.
Yeah,
But
I
so
guess you probably didn't think that y'all were getting a history lesson.
yeah, and the thing is, it's a short interview, but he talks about how kind of like the ending of the war, how that took place. Because I think he was there when Jefferson Davis got the news of
Right,
pretty much
Petersburg.
of the Union breaking through,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about his time as a prisoner of war with the Union, and the kind of the death of Lincoln. Hearing about the death of Lincoln. And even saying it's like we had no animosity towards President Lincoln, and we were actually very saddened by his death. And kind of the whole idea of like why they fought for the Confederacy, and kind of like his own personal thoughts. Like he didn't he seemed like to me that he didn't like slavery. He didn't think that it was a good practice. And actually, to be honest, the South is already kind of like on its way to kind of getting rid of slavery.
Right.
Like I said, Robert E. Lee
Yeah.
didn't.
Right, and like the average, and again, like it's not as though everyone in the South had a slave. It's not as though everyone, in the South had a giant plantation and had like hundreds and thousands of slaves. No,
Come to
I mean that.
Alabama. Here's your slave. It's like
Yeah, it wasn't
that's not
like
that's
it
not
wasn't
how it
like that.
works.
And it's like, and slavery was a detriment to the South because if you had all this cheap if you had all this cheap labor, to plant and grow and pick your cotton, then what opportunities are there for like the average white man
And there's
to earn a
actually
living?
what people don't realize too. There's actually free black men in the South at that time too.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're free. They're black slave owners. They were black. They're freed black men who then went and who then lived who lived in the South, and then they themselves had slaves.
Yeah, and there was black people. There was black people that fought for the Confederacy.
Yeah, and I mean, don't take our word for it. I mean, this is actually true, but don't take our word for it. Go look it up for yourselves.
I mean,
there are
don't get me
black
wrong.
people. I mean,
Don't
kind
get
of
me
like
wrong.
I
The
mean,
movie
I know this
Glory
is
is
just a
awesome.
movie. Well, I know this is just a movie, but there's that scene in Glory.
Yeah, yeah.
When they're going in, they're doing reconnaissance or whatever it is, and they march into this town, and then the really shitty colonel allows his black soldiers to go and like pillage the town, and they're trying to pillage this one house, and the slave girl, she's like fighting with the black soldier trying to steal like the silverware. It's like, why is she fighting with him? Why doesn't she just like say, yeah, like the silver's over there, don't forget the silver candlesticks. Why?
Yeah, exactly.
because she from that I know, and again, this is just a movie, but I think it does point to reality. It's because those those so-called the black slaves were invested in the family. They were they obviously they were treated well enough that that they try to intervene in the theft or in the looting of or pillaging of
They, yeah,
their
they
master's
felt like it was
belongings.
their home.
Yeah,
They felt like it was
they
their
thought of
home
it
that was
as
being
their home
pillaged.
too.
And honestly, it shows a lot of you know. I think this movie, Glory is a great movie, and I think it
Mm-hmm.
also does show that, like, honestly, yes, the Union was actually, we kind of think of them as the quote unquote good guys,
Mm-hmm.
but really they had some of the same animosity, or kind of like didn't feel like that. They felt like that the blacks were inferior, probably more so than the Confederacy did in a lot of ways. And like kind of like that one general is like, oh yeah, just let them pillage the town, let them let them run crazy. Like
Right?
they're
Yeah,
not.
like
They're just a bunch of
exactly.
crazed animals. So let them have it. Let them
Yeah,
have it.
they're yeah. He called he referred to them as children, like monkey children.
Yeah,
And this is someone who was fighting for the Union. And he had these
exactly.
and he had these views about his black soldiers.
I mean, hell, even Lincoln, he says like if I could, he kind of had some of those same views. Like if I could preserve the Union and keep slavery, I would. He didn't think that they were like. He didn't really have a whole lot of belief in the black race or anything like that. So it's not that like it's not like these guys were better and these guys were bad. It was just a very this time period is so misrepresented. It's beyond belief.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of nuance to this. Um, and people they just won't take the time to look into things themselves, and to a certain point I understand kind of like, well, this is what they taught us in school. Why would they lie to us in school?
Yeah,
And that's fair. That's I understand that.
there's so
But
much that as because I love history, so I I've studied way more than about this stuff like than I ever did in school,
mhm.
and there is so much that is either left out or not. And you look at you honestly, if you look at from like when we were in school, like a text, like a history book from like when we were in school to what they
Mhm.
have now. Oh man, there's so much that like they have wrote all this. It's not history anymore. It's just like whatever they want it to
Right.
be.
Well, yeah. I mean, because they like in Chicago, they wanted, or like I think a lot of schools around the country, they want to start using the 1619 project thing
Project,
as
yeah,
for curriculum to teach history. And it's crazy because even the author of the 1619, I think the initial paper, like, or the 1619 project, she's like, oh no, this wasn't meant to be taken as historical. I didn't do like any research.
yeah,
This is basically a creative writing assignment.
yeah.
But then no, they still
But yeah,
like they totally ignore that, and they're just like, no, 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 no. This is like, no, this is good. We should teach this, like, but it's like fake. This is like, yeah, again,
yeah,
it's a creative writing assignment.
yeah. It's insane. Um, but I honestly, I highly encourage anyone to go listen to this interview. Listen to this guy. He's not some like evil, crazed bigot that wants to have every black person in chains.
Right, and
He's a
he yeah,
good
and he
man.
even he even tells a story like yes, his family did have like some slaves, but he grew up around them. Like he said like there weren't a lot of white children around, so I spent most of my time with the black children, the slave children.
Yeah,
And then he kind of concludes the interview by saying, I'm glad I didn't bring up my kids with slavery.
Yeah, yeah, and he's a good man. And it's a shame that most people are not going to hear his words and kind of take his side of the story.
Or even like, well, not even take his side, but like even listen to and listen and consider his side of the story.
Yeah,
Because yeah, like here's a guy who joined up again because again he reiterates himself in this interview by saying it was about states' rights. Period. Full stop. Do not collect $200. That's all.
yeah,
That's all it
exactly.
was about.
So, like I said, it was just and this is this is birthed from watching a very controversial film called Birth of a
Right.
Nation.
Yeah.
Not, no,
Right. Because again, me and Robert, we were going into this, thinking, oh man, Birth of the Nation, best movie of all time. It's like no, we
I
just
did
watched it and we were actually surprised because this the Birth of a Nation was so vilified and demonized. I mean, to a certain
yes.
degree, yes, but to actually watch it and then see how pro Lincoln it was, like saying how
Really
under
surprised
Lincoln
that
we like the
that
South would
shocked me.
have done a lot better if Lincoln wasn't assassinated.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of the Confederate soldiers believe that too.
Right, because I mean
And to be
Under
honest,
Johnson they got
had
fucked over hard.
yeah, uh, had Lincoln not, and this is just my thinking, because
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln, yes, did overreach a lot. He used the government's arm. He way overreached. But from my understanding, his idea for Reconstruction is, nope, we're just going to go right back to where we were at before. It's kind of like, and we're going to shake hands and we're going to be friends again. It's kind of like, and he wasn't going to hold anyone, like, no one's going to be tried for war crimes or treason, none of that. Like, that was just, he was going to wipe his hands and say, like, we're done fighting.
Right,
We're good to,
basically, yeah.
we're done.
Lincoln had a tabula rasa sort of approach or had a tabula rasa idea about how to go about Reconstruction. I mean,
Yeah.
in a way, very similar to Nelson Mandela, where he was just like, no, we're not gonna try and get revenge, or we're not gonna hold like kangaroo court and trials and things like that. We're just gonna get past it. We're gonna, and but the only thing that Nelson Mandela did was he set up like this special kind of like hearing thing where people can go and like you know make grievances, but then also seek like some sort of restoration or restitution.
Yeah. But so that was Lincoln's plan. I think that was probably a pretty good plan. That was gonna like let the nation heal.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Johnson, on the other hand, um, was a huge dick.
Right. He had a he
he
went about
hate
it
he
like with
hated
like a very
hated the
vindictively.
Confederacy. Yeah, he hated the Confederacy, and wanted to like put a jackboot on their neck. And honestly, his actions, I think, forced was the reason why the Ku Klux Klan even became a thing, because there was so much animosity toward the government, and since the Confederacy couldn't fight for like a lot of these former slave owners, they couldn't they're not going to start another war because they're going to lose. Um, and they kind of essentially eliminated the idea of states kind of seceding from the Union. So they decided to take it out on who they could, and that was the former slaves, and kind of helped um, kind of created this whole problem of what we kind of get today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
The quote
yeah,
unquote
it's
like
just yeah,
racism and
yeah.
Jim Crow
So
laws.
yeah, but it's crazy because it's really interesting because I mean, kind of like the analog for today would be Antifa, and Not to say that Democrats are directly funding these guys, but
But
they're definitely throwing their support behind them. Not calling out the bullshit, not calling out the destruction. Uh, not really saying anything. And it's crazy because like those Antifa people who are supposedly for like black people, they're the most racist people.
they hate black people too.
Yeah, no, it's so like there's like the confused kind of racist Antifa people, and particularly they're all white too. They're
Yeah,
like the
there's a lot of
there's
black people.
the
It's like
console.
you're oppressed. You're terrible. Like you're in terrible conditions
Right, right,
just
right.
because
There's
of your
the
peace feels like. And they're like, no, I'm not. Like I'm actually like doing really well, and like white people are my friends, and it's like or like you get these white woke
right.
liberals yelling at black and minority cops, telling them like how they're part of the system. They're not real black people.
Right, you're yeah the Joe Biden take. It's like, oh, you're not
Well,
black.
yeah, yeah. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're not really black, according to
Yeah,
Joe
or
Biden.
like, or if you stand against, like, if you're with the supposed oppressors, then you're a race traitor. Like, yeah, it's like, do you have like the concern troll type, kind of liberal Antifa person, like kind of like that woman where it's like, oh, racism is my problem, and I have to tell them like, like, that racism is a huge problem because they, and I have to help them get justice because they can't get it by themselves. It's like because they're so oppressed. It's like totally kind of very disparaging, very condescending. That's the better word, condescending to black people. It's like, oh no, these
Yeah,
black people, they can't get justice for themselves, so I, the good white person, have to come in and help them because I am the one
get
with the
informed.
privilege, I am the one with the power, so I have to use my privilege and power to help these poor black people get justice and become equal. It's like,
Absolutely
do you not
insane.
hear yourself?
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Right, and then kind of interestingly, there's that like kind of the overt ones where those they call like they'll call black police officer niggers, or oh, I just saw this video on Instagram uh through the explore page, but it was like a quick video where it's like this black guy, he was just like he wasn't part of like the riots or anything, but he was just talking to a police officer, and then this white guy with a BLM sign comes over and starts calling him like in his words a nigga, not a nigger. And so it's like, and it was like so crazy because he was trying to say like, oh no, because I used an A sound. That's much less worse than saying the hard ER.
Oh my god.
I swear to God, that's what he said. It's like.
The left
he was actually making trying to make the argument that saying like nigga versus nigger is better.
yeah, I'm honestly though, like it's just ridiculous, man. Like what? Yeah, I can't I can believe it because I'm seeing it, but at the same time, it's still like it just baffles me.
Yeah, I it's yeah. Again, the interview is linked in the description underneath the video. Like underneath right now, it's available.
Yeah,
I highly recommend that you. I mean, not right now. Just keep watching this, but afterwards,
as soon
go
as
go
as
and
soon as
go.
you're done, listen to him. Listen to this guy talk. Yeah, he's a good man. He's and I think will shed some light on maybe something you've never heard before.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and even in post-war, he was a leader and trying to take care of his fellow soldiers. And he set up like kind of like the Confederate Veterans Association, or like he was like the president of it.
Yeah,
This organization that, again, not this group of soldiers again who were not, you know, for the preservation or the extension of slavery, but just trying to fight for
their
their
country,
country, their
yeah.
state, their 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 home.
Yeah, because honestly, we were talking about like the end of the Civil War ended state autonomy.
Yeah, it did. I mean, does anyone like really refer to themselves anymore by like the state that they live in? Like, oh, I'm a
Fuck
Virginian,
no.
or or
Yeah,
I'm a
I'm a
Floridian.
Californian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Californian or Oregonian, or I mean, I know a lot of politicians use that type of language, like particularly like governors or state senate types or representatives. Like, yeah, those like, oh, my fellow Californians and da, da, da. But then there's no real like state identity,
No.
you know.
Anyways, we ended up going to a little bit longer of a history lesson than I thought about, but I think it's an interesting thought exercise. So that's why
No,
I
yeah,
wanted to
absolutely,
discuss it.
right. I mean, yeah, I'm always it's I'm never afraid to play with ideas or or doing like thought experiments and and considering the other side. You know,
Yeah.
I'm confident enough in what I know that I can entertain a thought without like fully like just adopting it. I forget who said it.
Yeah.
That's a quote. But yeah, and also I keep my mind open enough so like to the point where so if my but not as open to the point where my mind falls out.
Exactly.
You know, and I think people need to get back to that place where they're able to play with these like ideas, and yeah, they might seem wrong or they might seem like controversial, but it's just an idea. It's not saying that you're not you know again you're not taking on the idea. You're not internalizing it and making it your own. You just it's like playing with dough. It's like playing with Play-Doh. You're just playing with it. You're not consuming it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was fun. I didn't know we were gonna go into a whole Civil War lesson, but here we are.
Yeah, and I know. Like it's so fascinating because if you study the Civil War, then you have a better idea of or you have a broader context for what kind of things that are going on right now.
It's I still find it funny. If we were too afraid or sissy to not even like watch a movie like Birth of a Nation, we wouldn't have had this thought exercise.
Right, exactly, and yeah, we wouldn't put forth this idea or be able to talk about like the fact that there are black Confederate soldiers or there are black slave owners or that
The first recognized slave owner in the United States was a black man.
there you go. And again, don't take our word for it. Look it up for yourself. Because I mean that's how confident that we are in our positions or what we ourselves have come to learn. Because yes, me and Rob, we had like kind of like the standard American education, public education, and I mean, and we both came up at a time where I think it was a lot better than it is today.
God, that's saying a lot because it was pretty shitty back then.
Yeah, it was shitty back then, but somehow they I think despite the education that we received, we became we were able to become critical thinkers.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, don't like
Well,
this is the information that we got. Don't take our word for it. Look it up for yourself. If you want, call us on our bullshit. But I bet you $100 that you won't be calling us bullshitters.
yeah. Well, let's go from one history lesson to another, and let's go into our Lost Speedways discussion.
Yes. In episode 2 of Lost Speedways, and this episode 2 covers what was the name of the track?
Mid Georgia Raceway is the
That's right,
racetrack
Mid
that we're
Georgia.
looking at.
Right. And yeah, this particular racetrack had a very, it had a very, it's this weird,
Colorful history.
colorful and this weird synchronicity that happened with uh, this particular racetrack. Um,
And man, they had quite a few heavy hitters as far as racing legends to talk about this racetrack.
mhm.
Um, the first guy, Ken Reagan, he was the last guy to win at Mid Georgia Raceway before it shut down, and he is a short track legend. He was a big deal, and his son just recently retired from NASCAR. Um, so it's kind of has like a little bit of a racing heritage for him. So he was talking more about like the actual track itself and uh, the story behind this racetrack is that it was home to an illegal moonshine still, and not just like a little like thing in like the back corner. No, it was this a what they believe is a fairly prominent it was, I mean, large. I mean, they
Right. It was
were
like almost like
producing
industrial
hundreds of
scale.
gallons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
industrial scale, like kind of still.
and it seems like today the still is lost. Like they're not able to find it, but they were actually looking to find people who may have known that it existed, that witnessed it, that they saw it, and they called in also a former driver by the name of Gary Blue. And I would encourage you and the audience to pick up his book because he is one of the most fascinating people um, ever. Like, and I'd also listened to him on the Gary Blues interview on the Dale Jr. download. What a fascinating guy this person is. He is he was one of the great race car drivers. Never like won in the Cup Series, but he was a big deal in racing. But he was what he became known for. He was a smuggler. He smuggled drugs like on a big scale, um, and that funded his racing career was the drug smuggling. And he was arrested for
Whoa,
it
yeah, that's
twice.
crazy, man. Yeah, what a freaking
Yeah.
badass.
So I'll send you the link to some of the interviews that he did on a couple of podcasts because I think everyone should really like listen to what this guy has to say. Very fascinating guy. The But he was for whatever reason like he's a likable guy, and he witnessed he was there like they didn't tell a whole bunch of people about the still. I mean, hell, I don't even think the racetrack owner knew of the still. At least that's the court story is that he didn't know about the still,
Mm-hmm.
which is why the track was able to keep operating for a little bit longer,
Mm-hmm.
and why that guy didn't go to jail. But yeah, it was like kind of like this big secret, and only certain people knew about it. And they even had like a dummy ticket booth, which was like the secret entrances, and they would have they were selling this stuff out of like a dummy fire truck and ambulance that was set up so that they were able to serve drinks out of there. And no one questioned it because it's like, oh well, it's a racetrack, of course there's an ambulance and a
Right,
fire
it was
truck,
hiding in plain sight because like because
Yeah,
like
exactly.
no one's gonna question why a fire truck or an ambulance is parked out in the midfield of a racetrack.
Yeah, and it's like, and honestly, like the story of the racetrack is like, it's not about the racing, it's about this story, this still. And
Yeah, it's
it's
about the
just
moonshine, which again I
yeah,
get
and
like I mentioned before is this weird synchronicity, because the whole way that NASCAR got started was because of bootlegging, and running.
Yeah, yeah, it was people running from the cops and like making their cars, as fast as they could, faster than the police cars. And once the Prohibition era ended, they I was like, well, crap. Well, why
Yeah,
don't
they
we
have
race
all
our
these like souped
cars?
up cars. It's like, oh, well, now we have all these souped up cars. What are we gonna do with them? Like the most
Yeah,
obvious thing in the world. You race, you race against other people.
yeah. Um, yeah, so it's like this whole thing. It kind of harkens back to the early days of racing. And it was just, I don't know. I found it to be, this is a story that I had never heard before. I had never heard of this racetrack. I know all the players that they talk to, like, I know that. And so hearing something new from these guys about this racetrack and what happened, it's like, uh, this is even better than the pilot, the first episode that we watched.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just and I love that that this track had that weird synchronicity about kind of having a tie that tied to the origins of the sport. It's just like
Yeah,
it's just one of those like delightful things to find out. Um, and again, I think again that's the reason why NASCAR is really the original American sport.
it really is.
Because one, it was something it was it was inspired by a refusal to submit to authorities, um, uh, and it's so in a way it has like this kind of like real like rebellious, uh, almost revolutionary spirit to
Yeah, and yeah, that's why outside of like what's been going on this year, like that. This is why I love auto racing, especially NASCAR. I love it so much. Is it's stuff like this. There's a rich history to it.
it.
On top of like really awesome racing, and not just the racing, but awesome, almost larger than life characters in a lot of ways. Um, yeah, that's what I've always really liked about the sport, and especially like the learning these stories, you know, from also these other crazy characters. Like Gary Ballou is one of the wildest people you know uh, to hear from.
Yeah, I mean, even though the sport went legit, he kind of was carrying on the tradition of smuggling
Yeah, he was smuggling,
and
doing some other
bootlegging.
different types of smuggling, but yeah, that was
Yeah, and it was interesting because again, like how you were saying, like he was actually funding his racing career with the proceeds. Like, man,
yeah,
that's like so like in the spirit of of NASCAR. That's ridiculous.
yeah. It's just wild. I actually I'm probably gonna pick up his book here pretty soon, and I'll read it and I'll pass it on to you after I do that.
All
Because
right.
I think you'll find his story very fascinating. Because it's not just about racing, but it's just about his life, and it's
Mm-hmm.
quite a fascinating one at that.
Mm. Yeah, I do enjoy me a good story. Is there anything else you like to add, or
No, nothing else from
I'm pretty much
that episode. I can't wait for episode 3 now. Like I've been, it's um, yeah. I'm actually, thing is though, I'm really glad that you're in. I wasn't so sure you were gonna like it, and so far I think you liked it so far, right?
yeah. I mean, again, now I don't know if I'll ever sit and watch a movie, or I mean, sit and watch a race, but I love the history. I love history. I love
Yeah,
I love finding out like about how things start, or like the colorful characters. Um, you know, the interesting times that things happen at.
Yeah,
So I'm a really big fan of like history and learning about history. So yeah, I mean, I mean, if we watch the doc, if we, I could watch a documentary about Barbie dolls, and I'd be interested, just because it's like the kind of like the history behind like Barbie and what and the formation and like the story behind Barbie. I'm all for it.
it's a you speaking like did you have you watched the Toys That Made Us docu series on Netflix?
I remember you showing me that one episode with Star Wars.
Yeah, that's something we
Uh,
should do too. I think you're gonna because they did talk about Barbie. Be interesting. It's
ah,
actually a very fascinating story.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit, like here and there, but maybe a more in-depth look into it, could be interesting. Then maybe we
Yeah,
should put that on the list of docu series that we
yeah.
watch.
I think we should do that.
All right, sounds like a plan. I mean, yeah, it might be a nice departure from like all these like sports related
Oh yeah, yeah.
docu series.
All right. Well,
All right.
that's awesome. Well, can't wait till episode 3. I'm gonna watch. I like you said, I may watch that tomorrow just because it's it's bugging me. Like, cause I'm a binger. So I
Yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah.
watch it. Like, but I'm trying to be good.
Right? Doesn't it feel good to exercise self restraint, Robert? Delayed gratification.
I
Delayed
suppose. I
gratification,
suppose.
man. That's the way to go.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, I'm a racing junkie, man. I want all my like racing stuff. Like I watch old races. I like learning about history of racing. This is right up my alley. So it's hard, but I'm hanging in there.
Right. All right. Well, that was our review for Lost Speedways episode 2. Again, per usual, how we usually do it, we're gonna wait until we watch the entire series before we give our rating. But so far so good.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. All right. Well, let's get into the last bit on our agenda, which is the movie review. As you all know, let me just give and the again tonight's review is of The Artist, and again this month's theme is silent movies. So let me
Once
give
again, I
y'all.
we didn't if had we thought ahead for this month, we would have made up title cards. Yeah, so we would we could be
Right, yeah.
like
So we could keep into the theme of silent movies, and so we could
there's a bunch of other silent ones that we'll probably do another silent month at some point. Maybe that'll be our every September because September silent September seems like a pretty good theme to go
well,
with.
I mean, there's the alliteration, so.
Yeah, it gets.
All right, let me give you all the synopsis for The Artist. In the 1920s, actor George Valentine is a bona fide matinee idol with many adoring fans. While working on his latest film, George finds himself falling in love with an ingenue named Peppy Miller. And that's and what's more, it seems Peppy feels the same way. But George is reluctant to cheat on his wife with the beautiful young actress. The growing popularity of sound in movies further separates the potential lovers as George's career begins to fade while Poppy's star rises.
Yeah, this was I Andy's been on it with picking movies recently because I did, and my idea for the whole like silent film was we're choosing old films, and he mentioned this one. It's like, oh yeah, there's just like one from long ago. Well, we should check it out for thing. And I watched this like I didn't know this movie existed. Uh, which is, and I had to say I loved it. It's, yeah, the thing is, it's kind of talking, it's harkening back to the silent era. This is a real time period where, the silent films were so popular for us, for a time, and towards the end of, the 20s going into the 30s, that talkies were, the sound pictures were becoming the normal thing, and a lot of great stars faded. When that transition happened, and that's kind of like what we get in the film called The Artist. George Valentine, is the star of stars of the silent era, but as the time, and we're kind of seeing, like, he's the talk of the town. All the press wants to be around him. They want to, like, want to see him. They want to see him at the premieres of the movies, all that stuff. And as time goes, moves on, and he was the one that gave, what was it, Peppy or Peppa or Pepper Mill?
Peppy.
What was her name? Yeah,
Peppy Miller.
What? Peppy Miller. He was the one that gave her start. It's like he chose her out of uh you for to be part of his movie, and kind of her, like, leg up in the industry, and he fading, and she kind of like surpassed him. She was the one that became the talk of the talkies, if you will. Um, and she became like the Hollywood darling, and that's a very real thing in Hollywood at that time. We look at, there's only a few people that really, transitioned and, made a career in sound pictures. You have Chaplin, Lillian Gish, who was in um, Birth of a Nation, and there's a few other stars. But their career was not as successful as it was in the silent era. And really, the ones that really kind of like made the transition the best were actually some of the directors. You have um, crap. I'm trying to blank on his name now. Uh, uh, like Carl Lamel, who's the director and producer of next week's film, made it. It did. He had a pretty long career. You have. No, why can I not think of the guy's name right now? The guy who did North by Northwest, and uh, all the great, like, Psycho,
Hitchcock.
and all the great Alfred Hitchcock. Thank you. He was silent. He did a lot of movies in the silent era, and moved into talking pictures, and made quite a. He was more successful in the talking pictures. Obviously, he's most known for that. But yeah, there's people that made their successful transitions, but not many. And the unfortunate part too is, we don't. A lot of those silent pictures are gone now. But yeah, it's I like this picture. It's kind of, um, I found it to be very compelling, very fun, and it's funny because, like, my wife was watching me watch this, and she's like, "Why are you watching a movie without sound?" It's like, it's it's that's stupid. It's like, no, it's not. This is what people used to watch. This was entertainment back in like the turn of the century, like the teens, and the 20s. Like, this was a big deal.
Right. To them, moving pictures was magic. And then
Yeah.
eventually, when they were able to record sound with it, that was like, for us, watching YouTube in HD.
The funny thing is that, like, those pictures, the silent pictures, that came before radio, because radio wasn't a thing until like the 30s,
Right. Yeah. Or at
late
least
late 20s, early
commercially
30s.
available radio.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
but
it's,
yeah, and I just to backpedal just a little bit. Yeah, I know when Robert first suggested that we do silent movies, you know, I was fully, willing to just, let him make the selections because it was his idea and everything. But just this one movie was, stuck out to me because it was recent and again it's one of those homage type of movies, and it didn't have to be silent, but it was telling a story of bygone time, and I thought it would match well for this series. And again, I'm and kind of like Robert, I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed this movie. It was very whimsical, charming, even. Um, Particularly the actress, because I was well aware of this actress like even like 20 years ago, because she came out in that Heath Ledger movie, uh, A Knight's Tale.
yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I do remember
Yeah,
her
she
now.
played she
Yeah,
played the handmaiden to like the main girl.
yeah,
Yeah, but like even back then, I was more interested in her. I was like, man, she's really pretty. Like even more
yeah.
so than like the lead actress. And then yeah, and
And
she's been doing other stuff, like mostly in France. But then yeah, she got this role, and I was like, oh yeah,
the
and I gotta say, she aged like fine wine.
yes, she did. Um, I will say, like, one, if we're talking about like certain scenes that really like hit us, like, uh, I thought one of the ones like scenes that was so brilliant was the nightmare that George Valentine has, and like
Yes,
where he starts to like hear sound, and it's
right,
like his voice doesn't come out, but
right,
everything
yeah,
else.
it's kind of like one of those dreams where almost like you're running as hard as you can, but you're going in slow motion. But
Yeah,
in this case, it's for George Valentine, it's sound. So like he hears the clang of his glass, or he hears the rustling from like his one of them the makeup brushes, and then he's jarred, he's frightened by this, and like he looks in the mirror and he's like screaming, but he can't hear his voice. And then he goes outside, and then he hears like kind of the commotion of like the back lot, and then he hears like the giggling and snickering from a gaggle of of girls, background actors walk by, and yeah, I thought that was like brilliant. Just like kind of like just his like I don't know, his biggest fear at the time, is
and
sound.
yeah, and this is coming right as the movie company saying like we're no longer going to be producing sound films. We're going only exclusively to sound films,
Mhm.
and he has this nightmare, and that's what prompts him to like he pours everything that he has into producing like one mega project for a silent film. I mean, he spends pretty much everything he has, and as it's getting ready to premiere, and this kind of comes alongside the first leading movie that Pepe Miller is also premiering at the same time,
Mhm.
and that's when the econ Black Monday, the stock market crashes in '29.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like this really tragic tale in a lot of ways because that it ruins um, George Valentine.
Right.
Uh, Yet the thing, like the Pepe Miller, she didn't go to her own premiere. She went to watch George's film, and she
Mm-hmm.
was very touched by his film, like, and was moved by it, and that's, I think, why she was like, once she saw that his career was going down the tubes, she spent her money to reclaim all of his like stuff that was being auctioned off. She sent
Right.
people out
Yeah.
to buy
Yeah.
his stuff.
And it's like
So
pretty much an estate sale because he was probably in debt, and so to pay back his debtors, he probably he sold off all his things, and yeah, and just like and we see the end of George's movie, and it's very much a metaphor for his career, where at the end of his movie he's sinking into quicksand, and it's just it's like this. It's his it's his swan song. It's like saying like this is the end of me. This is the end of my career. I'm going out on my own terms, essentially, and he does because it's the very last. Again, as Robert saying, it was like just the next day is Black Monday, and his because he put everything into making this film that he becomes destitute essentially, and yeah, and I think pop and just before the movie comes out, George's restaurant having dinner, and Peppy comes in and she gives an interview saying how oh the reporter asks like, oh, why do you think your movies are so successful, and she kind of not realizing George is behind her, and starts like kind of like lambasting him, saying like, oh, I think people are tired of like the old movie star that just mugs for the camera. People want to people want to be hear me, and they want to they want to hear a voice. And, it's like out with the old, in with the new, and
and
it's
yeah,
just like the final nail. It's like the last nail in George's coffin, but then it's also kind of Peppy like twisting the knife into it. I mean,
yeah,
unintentionally, of course,
right,
but
right. But yeah, there was um, and we see like kind of George kind of go down this like really tough spiral. He moves into a very like modest studio apartment,
right. I mean, yeah, to
and
the like
he's
modest like being like it has a Murphy bed.
yeah, like real yeah. Uh, God, there's probably a lot of people that don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah. Yeah, but a Murphy bed is pretty much a hideaway bed.
Yeah,
It's usually hidden inside the wall, and then you could open up like a panel, and it'll drop down. And so yeah, so you like, and it's usually within the main living area. And so if you had guests over, then you could fold it back up into the wall, and then you could have a sitting area or whatever
right,
for
right.
guests, or eat
The
your dinner.
yeah. uh, but the one thing that he holds on to is all his old like films, his film library,
Mm-hmm.
and this scene kind of reminded me a lot of Sunset Boulevard, where
Mm.
I'm trying to think of her character's name right now. I'm drawing a blank, but she's kind of well, although she is still very well off. She's kind of entombed herself in with like her old films, and kind of just is constantly reliving the glory days, and that's kind of like what George Valentine is doing. Is he's stuck in his apartment. He's had to get rid of um, his butler, who was serving him very faithfully, even though he wasn't getting paid. Um, and he had to give up his house, all his belongings. And he was saying, and as he's watching them, it's like he becomes enraged, and it's like it's because of all these films. Like, this is where I'm at now. Look at what this whole
Right. Yeah.
career
I used to be this big shot, but now like I'm living in this crummy studio apartment,
and so he
with
starts
nothing.
to like rip up his films, and uh, now what people don't realize is that a lot of those old film reels, they were like very flammable.
They were basically fire bombs,
Yeah,
because of the chemical processing and the developing.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
I mean, if you guys ever seen Inglorious Bastards, they talk about this um, in the way that Shoshana tends to kill all the Nazis by burning
yeah,
all the celluloid.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was because the chemicals used in the processing of the film that made film very combustible.
And so yeah, he begins to like kind of rip it all apart, kind of destroy his apartment, and then he sets the majority of the films on fire, and then he like immediately regrets what he did, and but he's trying desperately to save like one of his films, which
Yeah,
was
one last film
well,
can, and then yeah, but then he was
yeah, and
overcome by the fumes.
yeah, he became overcome by the fumes, but his dog, finally got help and to help him get rescued. Um, and the film that he saved was the film that him and Pepe
Right. Well, it was
were
like
in.
it was the outtake reel, because there's a scene in the movie where, like, they're shooting the film, and there's a scene where he's like I think he's playing like some sort of a spy. He's supposed to make
Yeah,
his way through like this dance floor, and then him and Pepe are supposed to dance for a split second, and then he moves on. But then in the subsequent takes, he just kind of loses himself. Um, when he gets the Pepe, and they just kind of like continue to dance and dance, and I think that's the point where he starts like kind of falling for her. And so like so
right.
he
Yeah,
was like, and so he's trying to, so when he was found, he was found clutching that film can for like dear life. And so Pepe finds out that he almost dies in this fire, and she goes to the hospital, and the doctor said like, oh yeah, he was found. We basically had to use a crowbar to get that film can out of his hand. And she opens it up, and she sees the images on the film, and she sees it's that scene. It's that time. It's like that the first movie they worked on, and
right.
so that's when and that's when she decides that she's gonna take care of him, and then subsequently, um, uh, she helps him kind of get back on his feet, helps to revitalize his career.
Yeah, and it's you were saying like that you thought you remembered the film wrong about like how um about like him being embarrassed to be on like as on talkies,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of half right in that sense because she was like wanting him to be part of like her in one of her movies, and he was saying it's like I don't know if I would be really good in the talkie, but why don't we do this type of movie? And it was them dancing together, kind of like a Fred Astaire
Right,
type of movie,
right.
and it ends with the sound of them tap dancing.
Right, yeah, and I love that. I love that at the end where like even like it start, and then it pans to like them showing the studio exec, played by John Goodman, their idea of essentially musicals,
Yeah,
and John Goodman's character just loves it, and then they transition from out of his office and onto a sound stage, and they're just dancing up a storm, and you know, call me hokey or something, but I love that. I absolutely love I absolutely love like the Fred Astaire Ginger Roger pairing. Just like
yeah,
the perfectly in sync like dance routine. It was so great. I absolutely loved it. I actually, after I watched it, I actually moved the tracker back and just so I could watch it again.
yeah, yeah.
It
It's
was
a
it
great
was so
scene.
great. Yeah, and then at the very end, like you know, the director calls cut, and John Goodman's character, the studio executive, is just overjoyed, and it's like perfect, and then
Yeah,
he asked if if they could do it one more time, and then finally at the end you get to hear George Valentine speak, and all, but then his only line is, it's like, with pleasure.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, the ending was a work of genius, and like how, it kind of like at the end, finally, you kind of like get your, because I think like especially like when it teased like during his kind of like nightmare that, oh, I guess there's gonna be sound in this movie, that it's gonna um we're gonna see like more. And it was, at that end you finally kind of get that release of like, oh wow, okay, so now it's kind of like, where there's sound in the studio, you hear them dancing, tap dancing, and it's kind of like at the end finally, like you have that brilliant, perfect, let's do it again, and with pleasure, it's kind of, and that's how it ended. It was just a great way to end the movie, I think.
Right, because again, in that dream, in that nightmare, fear sound was the sound was very jarring. Like the clang of the glass, or the rustling of the brush, or like the chatter or the giggling of that gaggle of background
Or the shaking of the
actors.
building too, because he was
Right,
shouting into the mirror. His voice wasn't coming out, but the building was shaking.
right, exactly. It was very jarring, very like, it seemed, yeah, it seemed like this big thing. But then at the very end, he was in control of it, the sound that he was creating, like from the tap dancing, all the way up until, he utters, his single line in the entire movie. It's like with pleasure. Like, it was all him, like controlling, like, and him having control over what he produced. I think,
Yeah.
like, and it kind of goes into like the whole idea of like why this movie's called The Artist, because even when he decided to go fund and write and direct his last movie. I think it was what was it called? Like Tears of Love, I think. Like
Yeah.
the papers, they're kind of lambasting him, but he was like saying like, well, I'm an artist,
Yeah.
and so like him, the only time he felt, well, not the only time, but I guess he didn't see himself as like that bygone actor who just all he can do is like mug for the camera. He was able to create something, and I think at the end, like that was his sort of catharsis, or like his sense of control over his destiny.
Right. And yeah, it was just this movie is great. It's yeah, it's not an old silent film, but it's I'm glad that we watched this one. This is a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we were talking about this before we started the stream, but yeah, I was completely charmed by this movie. There are a bunch of times where I just was I was watching this movie, and I completely forgot that this was a modern movie. I was fully immersed and believed that this was a movie from like the 20s, and because I think because the director of this film took such care with his choices, like how to shoot it, the art direction, how just the world that George Valentine lived in felt real, and it felt like something that it seemed familiar but also new. And I think that was and I think that much credit is due to the director.
Yeah, and I man, I don't know if I don't have any other like scenes or anything that I that really stood out to me. But I love this movie.
Yeah, and I mean even the parts where it was it was silent, and they put up the dialogue cards, and the entire movie, and like the times when like it was just uh, the musical score, the soundtrack that was driving the film, and like made you feel like, I completely felt like all the ways that you were supposed to feel. And like even when the parts where they were talking but they didn't flash up a card, I understood like I got the sense for what they were saying,
It was
or the
one of those things
conversations that
where
were happening.
and this is something too where we're going to talk a lot about this, especially next month, but is the physical acting, and that this movie definitely showed off that. It's the quote unquote mugging for the camera, where they don't have to have a lot of dialogue, but they're able to, their body language spoke so loudly, and
Right.
that to me that happened in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Especially when Peppy Miller's character was like introducing herself to freaking what was it? Is it Ian? No, no, right. It's Ian McDermott, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when she was like showing kind of like showing the papers like of her meet cute with George Valentine.
Right.
And like just that kind of like the confidence and self assuredness within that character, which like, well, I'm Peppy Miller, and it was very charming. So I was, so again, like you were saying, like the body language was very well done.
But yeah, I don't have anything else to say unless do you have anything else you want to talk about from this film, Andy?
No, that's all I had to say.
So if out of for my star rating on this one, it's a 5. This movie is just really good. I had no
Yeah,
idea this
I
film.
mean, again, this is one of the times where we agree. I don't. I was trying, maybe because I didn't want to seem like I don't know, like a fanboy, or I don't know, or something, or like a shill. But yeah, this movie's a 5. I mean, it was so enjoyable.
It's so good.
It's so good, and I mean, I think if your wife gave it a chance, she might like it too.
I think she would. But see, here's the thing: she doesn't like black and white, and definitely, I mean, black and white and silent. Oh, that's like the double negative for her. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
but yeah, I mean, if I really think if she gave it a chance, she'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I think if you come over and like you kind of convince her,
Mm-hmm.
she might listen.
Yes, because my word carries so much weight with her.
Yeah, or what we have to do is have.
Or we can do the whole Clockwork Orange thing and strap her into a chair and keep her eyes open.
I was gonna say if we just have James watch it and and he likes it and then he recommends it, then she might watch it.
It's so. I don't know if it's funny or sad. It might be a little bit of both, but it takes two. It would take 2 other men for your wife to watch a movie. I don't know. I don't know if that's funny or sad. It might be a little bit of both, but
because she thinks I'm just an old fogey. I like old games. I like old movies. I hate a lot of the. I don't like new praise songs that much.
Yeah, you're a neophobe. You're a neophobe.
Yeah, that's probably true. But hey, you know what? I have to say, I've started to get her, to lean her towards, liking some older movies. The thing is, I had to find characters that are hot or stories that are super exciting. So she loved the Back to the Future trilogy because she thought Michael J. Fox was hot. She really liked RoboCop. I was kind of shocked about.
Really?
Yeah, though, and she's actually excited to watch number 2. Though she was kind of like, I forgot how kind of dirty secret. I had never watched RoboCop before, so I finally watched it, I didn't realize how fucking gory that movie
Oh
is.
yeah, dude, so much body horror.
Oh
Like
man,
like
it
the
was
whole like
awesome.
this entire scene where they're killing Alex Murphy.
Yeah, I mean they blow off his hand. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it was great. And then like at the end, like the guy that gets taken out by the toxic waste, and then they slam
Yeah.
into him, and his body sprays everywhere. Oh, brilliant. Uh, whereas I got her to like she likes Lethal Weapon. So I mean, I'm getting her towards maybe liking some older movies. It's just you got to find hot characters.
uh, Let her watch some Steve McQueen stuff, like Bullet or.
I think because I think that might be something I might try to get her into. Because Steve
Yeah, I
McQueen is
mean,
quite a looker.
dude, Steve McQueen is hot. All right, and I have no
Maybe,
shame in saying that.
maybe for our birthday, Andy, we should do a movie marathon here, and maybe we can see if we can get her to watch some of them.
Okay, I mean, I'll check my schedule, but yeah, I mean, if the if the quarantine, if lockdown is still happening, yeah. But if lockdown is lifted, I might be going to Vegas. I don't know.
Got it.
Anyways, that was our review for The Artist. Both Robert and I give this 5 and more than enthusiastic recommendation to watch this movie. It is just great. If especially if you just want just some escapism and you just want to, and I mean, if anything else, that dance number at the end is just so full of joy and whimsy that it's just like
It
you
is.
can't watch it and then not smile.
Yeah, it was like that's one of the best endings to a film I've seen in a long time.
Couldn't agree with you more. All right, well that was the stream for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely had a good time. This was a really good one. I really enjoyed this stream. Talking about that Julius Howell interview, and then also talking about reviewing the Lost Speedways episode. Linking NASCAR's past with
Yeah,
somewhat of its more contemporary history, and then also The Artist. God, watch this movie seriously. It's great.
yeah. It's really good. And honestly, I'm excited for next week's. We're gonna do Phantom of the Opera from 1925 with makeup, artist genius Lon Chaney, and we're gonna do another Lost Speedways, and who knows what else we're gonna talk about.
Yeah, the only way to find out is if you tune in, if you subscribe, and that way you can get a notification when we go live. Look at that, just like a real YouTuber.
I know. Like, comment,
Yeah,
subscribe.
like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, all that in store for you guys next week. So please join us. In the meantime, don't forget to check out the library of other good goodies that we have for you. The Circle of Jerks main podcast. Just this past Monday, we dropped the most recent one with one of our buddies, Albert Huang. And he shares his perspective on the whole coronavirus situation, and that's definitely a worthwhile watch. Don't forget to check past live streams of Nocturnal Transmissions and Robert's gaming show Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts: Twitter @PodcastCOJ, Instagram @Circle of Jerks Podcast, and Letterboxd @PodcastCOJ. And with all that said, we thank you again, and let's do it again next week.